A black lady got in the wrong car on Christmas Eve. Korean Mafia boss locked the doors and said, "You're not leaving." On a freezing Christmas Eve in downtown Manhattan, Naomi Brooks just wanted to get home after a long, exhausting night. The city was glowing with lights and music, but none of it reached her. When a black sedan pulled up beside her, she climbed in without thinking, desperate for warmth. Seconds later, the doors locked. The man in front turned slowly and said, "You're not leaving." Naomi had no idea that getting into the wrong car would drag her into a hidden world and change her life forever. Before we go back, let us know where you're watching from and subscribe, because our next story is one you won't forget. Naomi Brooks had learned over the years that Christmas Eve was the loudest reminder of loneliness. The city dressed itself up in lights and music, pretending warmth could be manufactured with decorations. Couples hurried past, holding hands. Families piled into cars, laughter fogging the windows. Naomi stood on the corner of East 47th Street with numb fingers and a phone that blinked 3% like a countdown to disappointment. She shifted her weight, heels already biting into the backs of her ankles. The dress she wore had been bought on clearance 2 weeks earlier, chosen not because she loved it, but because it was the cheapest thing that still looked decent enough to wear to a work party. That party was already a memory she wanted to forget. Cheap champagne, forced smile, people talking around her instead of to her. She exhaled slowly, pulling her thin coat tighter. Next year, she muttered to herself, "I'm staying home." Her phone buzzed once, then went black. "Of course," she whispered. Perfect timing. She stared at the dead screen for a moment too long, panic creeping up her spine. No phone meant no Uber updates, no maps, no safety net, just her, the cold, and a city that didn't care if she made it home or not. A black sedan rolled up to the curb. The windows were tinted dark. The engine purred quietly, smooth and expensive. Naomi barely noticed the details. Relief drowned out caution. A car was a car, and warmth was waiting inside. She stepped forward, yanked the back door open, and slid in. "Oh, thank God," she breathed, sinking into leather. "4th Street, please. I'm the one who called. My phone just died. Can you turn the heat up? I can't feel my fingers." The silence was immediate and wrong. The car didn't move. Naomi looked up. The man in the front seat had turned halfway around. His eyes met hers in the rearview mirror first. Dark, sharp, assessing, not confused, not apologetic, calculating. "Who are you?" he asked. The words were calm, too calm. Her stomach tightened. I'm your ride. Uber. I ordered." The locks clicked. The sound sliced through her like ice water. Her breath caught. "Hey," she said quickly, sitting upright. "I think I made a mistake." The car rolled forward. "No, stop," Naomi said, panic rising fast. "Stop the car right now." Another vehicle pulled alongside them, close enough that she could see movement through its window. A shape leaned out, metal glinted. "A gun. Oh my God," Naomi whispered. The man in the driver's seat swore under his breath in Korean and reached back with brutal speed, gripping Naomi's hair and forcing her down. "Down," he ordered. Now, the first bullet shattered the back window. Naomi screamed as glass exploded around her, shards cutting into her hands. As she curled into the floor, more shots rang out, sharp, deafening cracks that echoed inside the car. The sedan lurched violently, tires screaming as the driver took a hard turn. She sobbed, face pressed into the carpet, heart slamming against her ribs. "Please," she cried. "Please let me out." "No," the man said flatly, voice steady despite the chaos. "Stay down." He spoke rapidly into a headset, barking instructions, completely unfazed by the gunfire. The car swerved again, bullets pinging off metal, sparks flashing in her peripheral vision. Time stretched and snapped. Seconds felt like minutes. Minutes felt like survival. When the car finally stopped, the sudden silence was almost worse. Naomi stayed frozen, shaking so hard she couldn't tell if she was injured or just terrified. "Up," the man said. Her head lifted slowly. Through the shattered rear window, she saw towering iron gates. Beyond them stood a massive, Gothic mansion wrapped in Christmas lights, white and gold, glowing softly against the snow. It looked like something out of a movie. Beautiful, unreal. The door opened. Cold air rushed in. The man stepped out, then came around to her side and grabbed her arm. "I'm not going with you," Naomi said, scrambling backward. "You can't." His grip tightened, strong, unmovable. Wrong car, he said, dragging her out onto the icy pavement. They saw your face, so tell them I'm not with you, she pleaded. They won't care, he replied. They think you're mine. Her blood turned to ice. I'm not. You are now. She fought him, heels slipping, fear giving her strength she didn't know she had. Let go of me. If you walk away, he said without slowing. They grab you in 2 minutes, and when they do, they won't let you live. The front door of the mansion burst open. A small woman rushed out, wrapped in a cardigan, white hair escaping its bun. She stopped short when she saw Naomi. "Oh," the woman exclaimed. "A girl." Before Naomi could react, the woman crossed the distance and pulled her into a fierce hug. "You brought a girl home on Christmas Eve," she said joyfully. "No," Naomi protested, voice muffled. "I'm not." "She's shy," the woman interrupted, pulling back to examine her face. "So beautiful. Look at her eyes." Naomi's gaze flew to the man. "Please," she whispered, "tell her." He didn't. "Inside," he said. The woman beamed. "I'm Hannah Seo," she announced proudly. His mother. Mother. The word hit Naomi harder than the gunshots. She was ushered inside before she could run. Warmth wrapped around her instantly. Heat, light, the smell of food. The door shut behind her, with a final click. "This isn't happening," Naomi murmured. "I was kidnapped," she said louder. Hannah paused, considering, then smiled. "Romantic." Naomi stared at her. "What?" "My husband kidnapped me," Hannah said fondly. "Aggressively courted. Very passionate man." Naomi's knees nearly buckled. A massive man appeared in front of her, blocking the exit. Broad shoulders, stone face. "Inside," the driver repeated. She was guided through the mansion like a guest, and a prisoner all at once. Hallways stretched endlessly. Portraits watched silently. Everything was polished, expensive, controlled. She was placed in a guest room larger than her apartment. Her coat was gone. Her phone was gone. Everything familiar had vanished. A soft knock came later. Hannah peeked in. "You're safe here," she said gently. "Eat, sleep. Tomorrow, we talk." "This isn't my home," Naomi whispered. Hannah smiled, warm and certain. "Not yet." The door closed. Naomi sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the walls, heart still racing. She replayed the click of the locks, the gunshots, his voice telling her she wasn't leaving. She didn't know his name yet, only that getting into the wrong car hadn't just put her in danger, it had pulled her into a world that wouldn't let her go without a fight. And somewhere downstairs, the man who had locked the doors stood alone in the dark, staring at the shattered glass of his car window, knowing the war he'd tried to outrun had just followed him home with her caught right in the middle. Naomi didn't sleep. She lay on the massive bed, with her eyes open, staring at a ceiling carved with patterns that probably had names she didn't know. The sheets smelled clean and expensive, nothing like the detergent she bought on sale. Everything about this room felt wrong, too quiet, too safe for a place she hadn't chosen. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the locks again, click, saw the gun, felt his hand in her hair, forcing her down. Her hands shook as she pulled the blanket tighter around herself. "This is not happening," she whispered into the dark. "You're dreaming. You'll wake up." But the cold fear in her chest didn't fade. Footsteps passed outside the door sometime after midnight. Heavy, controlled. They stopped briefly, then moved on. Naomi held her breath until she realized she'd been doing it too long, and gasped softly. She slid off the bed and padded to the door, pressing her ear lightly against it. Silence. Whoever had been there was gone. The room had no visible locks on the inside. That realization alone made her heart race. She crossed the room and tried the window. It opened an inch before stopping, reinforced with something invisible but solid. Snow dusted the ledge outside. Below, the ground stretched wide and dark, dotted with lights and shadows that moved slowly. Guards. She stepped back. Naomi sank to the floor with her back against the wall, knees pulled to her chest. Her phone was gone, her bag was gone, her ID, her life stripped away in less than an hour. She didn't cry, not yet. Crying felt like surrender. Instead, she thought. She cataloged everything she'd seen since getting into the car. The driver's calm under fire, the way he spoke, the way the other men had targeted him. This wasn't random. He wasn't just dangerous. He was important. And now, somehow, she was attached to him. "You're mine." The words echoed in her head, chilling and absurd all at once. Morning came quietly. Soft light filtered through sheer curtains, painting the room in pale gold. Naomi hadn't realized she'd drifted off until she startled awake, heart racing again. A tray sat on the bedside table. She stared at it. Food, tea, toast, fruit, eggs, steam curling gently upward. She hadn't heard anyone enter. That terrified her more than if she had. Cautiously, she stood and approached the tray. Her stomach twisted painfully at the smell. Hunger made the decision for her. She ate slowly, half expecting something terrible to happen with every bite. Nothing did. When she finished, she washed her hands in the bathroom, splashing cold water on her face. Her reflection stared back at her eyes, bloodshot, lips pale, a faint cut on her cheek she hadn't noticed before. She touched it gently. "I'm getting out of here," she told the mirror. "I don't care how." The door opened without warning. Naomi spun around with a sharp inhale. The man from the car stood there. Up close, he was even more imposing. Tall, broad shoulders beneath a dark coat. His hair was neat, his face unreadable, eyes sharp and steady. "You're awake," he said. Her heart pounded. "You took my phone." "Yes." "You kidnapped me." "Yes." The blunt honesty knocked the breath from her lungs. "Why?" she demanded. "Why not just let me go?" He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him, not locking it. That felt intentional. "My name is Kang Min-jae," he said. "You don't leave because people want you dead." She laughed, sharp and brittle. "That's insane. I'm nobody." He studied her for a long moment, then shook his head slightly. "You were in my car. That made you somebody." Naomi's hands curled into fists. "So what? I just stay here forever." "No. When do I leave?" "When it's safe." "And who decides that?" "I do." Anger flared hot in her chest. "You don't get to decide my life." Min-jae stepped closer. "I decide who lives." The words were quiet, certain. Fear prickled along her spine, but she refused to back down. "If you think scaring me will make me cooperate, you already are," he interrupted. "You ate." She hated that he was right. A knock came at the door before she could respond. Hana swept in, carrying folded clothes. "I brought you something clean," she said brightly. "You slept? You look tired." Naomi opened her mouth to argue, but Hana was already fussing over her, pressing a sweater into her hands. "Eat more later," Hana added. "You're too thin." Min-jae turned to leave. "I have meeting." Naomi watched him go, heart pounding with a mix of fear and fury. She couldn't untangle. Hana squeezed her arm gently. "He doesn't mean to scare you." "He kidnapped me," Naomi said flatly. "Yes," Hana agreed, "but he didn't hurt you." "That's not comforting." Hana smiled sadly. In his world, it should be. Later, Naomi wandered the halls, under quiet supervision. A woman she didn't know walked several steps behind her, pretending not to watch too closely. Naomi pretended not to notice. She memorized doors, turns, windows, camera. Survival was a habit. She found a library tucked away on the east wing, floor-to-ceiling shelves, leather chairs, warm light. For a moment it almost felt normal. She pulled a book at random, and sank into a chair, trying to escape through literature. Naomi jumped. A young man leaned against the doorway grinning, messy hair, lighter eyes, less dangerous energy though still sharp. "Who are you?" she asked. "Sejo Jun," he said. "Cousin." "Designated talker." "Designated what?" "The one who doesn't scare civilians," he said cheerful. She snorted despite herself. "That's not working." He shrugged. "Worth a try." They talked, carefully at first. Naomi learned he'd been raised here, that Min-jae had taken over young, that the attack last night wasn't unusual, but bringing her home. "He doesn't bring people home," June said. "Ever." "That's comforting," Naomi muttered. By evening, exhaustion hit her hard. Fear was draining. Thinking was draining. She returned to her room with a head full of plans and no clear path. Dinner was announced at 7. She almost refused, but hunger and curiosity won. The dining room was long and formal. Min-jae sat at the head of the table, composed as ever. Hana fussed. June joked. Others observed quietly. Naomi took her seat, feeling every pair of eyes on her. Min-jae glanced up. "You ate again." She glared. "Don't start." A flicker almost amusement passed through his eyes. After dinner she stood abruptly. "I want my phone." "No." "I want to call someone." "No." Her voice shook. "You can't just erase me." Min-jae stood slowly. "I can keep you alive. I don't want your protection." He stepped closer. "You have it anyway." Silence stretched tight between them. "You're not leaving," he said quietly. Naomi's chest tightened. "You don't own me." Min-jae met her gaze, unblinking. "Not yet." The words lingered, heavy and unsettling. She turned away before he could see the fear she refused to show. That night, as Naomi lay awake again, one thought repeated over and over. She hadn't just been caught in the wrong car. She had stepped directly into someone else's world. And Kang Min-jae had decided she was worth keeping alive, even if it meant locking every door behind her. Naomi woke to voices. They weren't loud. That was the problem. They slipped through the door like smoke, low, controlled danger. Men speaking Korean fast and clipped, the kind of tone people used when they didn't want to be overheard because what they were saying mattered. She lay still, eyes closed, breath slow, listening. "Valente men," confirmed it, one voice said. "They followed the car." Another replied. She saw their faces. A third added. Silence. Then Min-jae's voice cut through the rest. "Then she stays." A pause heavy enough to feel through the mattress. "For how long?" someone asked. "As long as necessary." Naomi's heart hammered so hard she was sure it would give her away. The door closed. Footsteps faded. Her eyes flew open. They followed the car. That meant it wasn't just him they were worried about. It wasn't just his enemies. It was what she had seen, where she had been. The fact that she was alive and breathing, and could talk. She sat up slowly, pressing her palms to her thighs until the shaking eased. So this was the truth. She wasn't a guest. She wasn't exactly a hostage either. She was evidence. That realization hardened something inside her. If she was valuable, then she had leverage. Breakfast came again without warning. A different tray this time. Someone was watching her patterns. What she ate, how much. She didn't touch it immediately. Instead, she walked to the mirror and studied herself, like she was a stranger. 5 days ago, she'd been invisible, a woman people brushed past on the street, the kind whose absence wouldn't trigger alarms. Now men with guns were discussing her fate, outside her door. "Okay," she whispered to her reflection. "Think." When she finally ate, she ate everything. If she was going to survive this, she needed strength. Fear didn't burn calories, thinking did. Later that morning, Min-jae summoned her, not with guards, not with force, just a knock. "Get dressed," his voice said through the door. "We're talking." She opened it cautiously. He stood alone this time, wearing a dark sweater instead of a suit, hair slightly disheveled like he hadn't slept. For the first time, he looked human, tired, edges worn thin. They walked side by side down a quiet hallway into a smaller room Naomi hadn't seen before. No grand table, no intimidating chair placement, just 2 seats facing each other, and a window overlooking snow-covered trees. "You want answers?" Min-jae said, sitting. She remained, standing. "I want out." "You'll get it. When you stop being a target." Her laugh was bitter. "I didn't ask to be one." "No," he agreed. "You were unlucky." "That's it," she snapped. "My life gets destroyed because of bad luck." His gaze sharpened. "Your life isn't destroyed. I can't leave. I can't call anyone. I don't know where I am." "You're alive," he said, evenly. "That counts for something." Naomi stepped closer, anger cutting through her fear. "Not to me. I had a job, a home, people who expect me to show up." "Who?" he asked. The question stopped her cold. She opened her mouth, closed. Her sister was in another state. They talked once a month. Her coworkers wouldn't notice for days. Her landlord cared only about rent. The silence answered for her. Min-jae didn't look smug. If anything, he looked regretful. "You don't disappear the way people like me do," he said quietly. "But you also don't have people who will come kicking down doors for you." Naomi swallowed hard. "That doesn't make this okay." "No," he agreed. "It makes it real." She crossed her arms. "Then be real with me. Who are you really running from?" For the first time, he hesitated. Then he stood and walked to the window. "There are factions," he said. "Rivals who don't attack directly. They wait. They watch. They use leverage. And I'm leverage." "You were," he corrected. "Now you're under my protection." She shook her head. "That's not comforting." "It should be," he said. "I don't lose what I protect." The weight of that sentence settled heavily in the room. Naomi forced herself to breathe. "So what's the plan?" He turned back to her, studying her carefully. "You stay visible here, safe, boring, while I make the problem disappear."
And if you fail, his eyes darkened. Something about the way he said it, without arrogance, without bravado, made her believe him. That scared her more than any threat. Over the next few days, Naomi learned the rhythms of the house: morning checks, afternoon meetings, evening quiet. She learned which guards were alert and which were lazy, which doors stayed locked, which ones didn't. She learned that Minjae watched everything, even when he pretended not to. She also learned he never touched her, not once. No hand on her arm, no guiding grip, no unnecessary proximity. It was deliberate, controlled. It confused her. One night, she confronted him in the hallway. "Why don't you treat me like a prisoner?" she asked. He stopped walking. "Because you're not one. You keep me here, to keep you alive." She held his gaze, and after he didn't answer right away. "That depends on you." The words echoed long after he walked away. Days later, the danger arrived at the gate. Naomi heard it before she saw it. The shift in energy, the way guards moved faster, the way voices dropped. She was in the library when June burst in, face pale. "Don't panic," he said quickly, "but stay here." "What's happening?" Naomi asked, already standing. "Visitors." Minjae entered moments later, eyes cold, expression lethal calm. "Stay," he told her. "I'm not a child. This isn't a debate." Voices rose outside, angry, demanding. Naomi moved closer to the window and caught a glimpse of black SUVs, men stepping out, tension thick enough to taste. One of them looked up. Their eyes met. The man smiled. Naomi's blood turned to ice. He knew her. He knew she was here. Minjae noticed instantly. His body shifted subtly, placing himself between her and the window without touching her. "Go to your room," he said quietly. "Lock the door." "Minjae, now!" She ran. Behind her, the house exploded into motion. Shouting, footsteps, the unmistakable sound of weapons being readied. Naomi slammed her door and locked it, heart racing, hands shaking so badly she had to sit on the floor. She heard it all, raised voices, Minjae's calm tone slicing through the chaos. A threat delivered with surgical precision, then silence. Minutes passed, maybe hours. A knock finally came. It was Minjae. "You okay?" he asked through the door. She opened it slowly. He looked exactly the same, not a hair out of place, but his eyes were darker, cold. "What did they want?" she asked. "You," he said honestly. Her throat tightened. "And they won't come back." "How can you be sure?" His gaze held hers, steady and unwavering. "Because they understand consequences." That night, Naomi didn't sleep at all. She sat on her bed, staring at the door, the walls, the locked window. She finally understood something important. She wasn't trapped because Minjae was cruel. She was trapped because the world outside was worse. And the most dangerous thing of all, part of her was starting to trust the man who had locked the doors and told her she wasn't leaving. That realization scared her more than any gun ever could. Naomi learned what it meant to live inside a fortress the morning after the men came to the gate. The house didn't feel the same anymore. It wasn't louder, it wasn't darker, it was sharper, like everything had been tightened one notch too far. Guards stood straighter, doors closed faster, conversations stopped the moment she entered a room. She noticed all of it. She also noticed Minjae avoided her, not obviously, not rudely, just enough that it felt intentional. When she came down for breakfast, he wasn't there. When she passed the office wing, his door was shut. When she lingered in the library later that afternoon, he sent June instead. "He's busy," June said, not meeting her eyes. "Busy with what?" Naomi asked. June hesitated. That was answer enough. That evening, Naomi stopped pretending. She walked straight to Minjae's office and knocked once before opening the door. He was standing behind his desk, jacket off, sleeves rolled, hands braced against the wood like he was holding the room together by force alone. Papers were scattered everywhere, phones, a tablet still glowing. He looked up sharply. "I told them not to let you in," he said. "I'm not furniture," Naomi replied. "You don't get to move me around quietly." Something flickered across his face, irritation, then relief, then something else, something darker. "Close the door," he said. She did. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched, heavy and loaded. "They knew my face," Naomi said finally. One of them, at the gate. Min-jae's jaw tightened. I know, so stop pretending. This is temporary, she snapped. Stop pretending. I'm just some inconvenience you'll tidy up and send away. He exhaled slowly, then rounded the desk and leaned back against it, folding his arms. He looked tired, really tired. You're not an inconvenience, he said. You're a liability. At least you're honest. I'm honest when it matters. Naomi laughed bitterly. It always matters when you're the one locked inside. His eyes lifted to hers, sharp and assessing. You could have been dead that night, and instead I'm here, she shot back, trapped in a place where men with guns decide whether I live or die. Not men, he corrected quietly. Men. That landed harder than she expected. She took a step closer. Then explain this to me like I'm a person, not a problem. Min-jae studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. They were waiting, he said. Not for you, for me. Naomi frowned. Then why follow the car? Because they didn't expect you. He pushed off the desk and walked toward the window, gaze distant. Rivals don't always attack directly. They take pieces. Pressure points. They see what breaks, and I'm a pressure point. You became one the moment you saw them. Naomi's chest tightened. So what happens now? Now, he said calmly, they think you're important. That's supposed to make me feel better. No, he replied. It's supposed to make you careful. She folded her arms. You could let me go, let me disappear. Min-jae turned back to her slowly. They wouldn't let you. You don't know that. I do, he said firmly. They already tried to take you in daylight. That wasn't intimidation, that was intent. Naomi swallowed. So I'm safer here. Yes, and how long does here last? Min-jae hesitated. That hesitation told her everything. She sank into the chair opposite his desk, suddenly exhausted. You don't know, I'm working on it. She looked up at him, really looked this time. The tension in his shoulders, the faint bruise along his knuckles, the way his eyes never stopped scanning. Even now, you live like this all the time, she said quietly. He didn't answer. You don't sleep much, she continued. You're always watching, always calculate. His mouth twitched. Occupational hazard. That's not a life. It's the only one I have. Something softened in her chest, just slightly. I don't belong here, she said. No, he agreed. You don't. Then why do I feel like if I leave, something bad happens? His gaze snapped back to hers, intense, unfiltered. Because you're not wrong. The truth of it hung between them. That night, Naomi couldn't stay in her room. The walls felt too close, the silence too loud. She wandered the house until she found the kitchen, lit by a single lamp. Min-jae sitting at the counter with a glass of water, staring at nothing. You're going to wear a hole in the air if you keep glaring like that, she said softly. He didn't look surprised to see her. Couldn't sleep. Could you? He gave a humorless smile. Rarely. She poured herself water and leaned against the counter a few feet away. Not too close, not too far. Why me? She asked suddenly. He turned to her. Out of all the people in the world who could have opened that car door, she said, why did it have to be me? Min-jae was quiet for a long time. Because you didn't scream, he said finally. Naomi blinked. What? When you realized it wasn't your ride, he explained. Most people panic, freeze, or lash out.
And I didn't. No, he said. You assessed. You spoke. You watched. She frowned. That doesn't make me special. It does in my world. She studied him. Is that why you don't scare me as much as you should? His eyes darkened. I scare you. Yes, she admitted, but not in the way I expected. And how did you expect? She hesitated, like someone who enjoys power. Min-jae looked away. Power is a tool, not a pleasure. That's a lie, she said gently. You enjoy control? He met her gaze. I enjoy survival. They stood there in quiet understanding. Days passed. The house settled into a strange rhythm that included her. She wasn't escorted everywhere anymore. Guards nodded instead of watching her hands. Staff spoke freely around her. Min-jae remained distant, but attentive. He always knew where she was, what she'd eaten, whether she'd slept. One afternoon, she found him in the gym, shirt off, tape wrapped around his hands as he hit the bag with controlled fury. She watched silently until he stopped. "You're going to break something if you keep that up," she said. "That's the idea. Violence as therapy?" He shrugged. "Cheaper than a shrink." She stepped closer, pointing at his knuckles. "You're bleeding." He glanced down. "It'll stop." "You're not invincible," she said. He smirked. "I know. Then act like it." He studied her for a moment, then surprised her by unwrapping the tape. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a bench. She obeyed without thinking. He grabbed antiseptic and bandages and handed them to her. "Help me," he said. Her breath hitched. "You're trusting me with that?" "I trust you," he replied simply. Her hands trembled slightly as she cleaned his knuckles, the intimacy of it making her pulse race. He watched her quietly, not moving, not rushing. "You could leave," she said softly. "I won't." "Why?" "Because if something happens to you," he said, voice low, "it happens on my watch." She looked up at him. "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have." That night, Naomi realized something terrifying. She wasn't just surviving here. She was becoming part of the equation. And the most dangerous thing of all, Minjae was starting to treat her like someone who mattered. Which meant if things went wrong, they would go very wrong, and for both of them. The first gunshot Naomi heard inside the estate didn't sound like a bang. It sounded like a door slamming the world shut. She was in the east corridor when the alarm screamed. Low, guttural, vibrating through the marble floors like the growl of something ancient and angry. For half a second, her body froze. Then everything moved at once. Shouts, boots, the sharp crack of a second gunshot. Closer this time. "Down," someone yelled. A guard grabbed her arm, pulling her behind a column, just as glass exploded somewhere near the atrium. Naomi's heart slammed so hard she thought it might tear free. This wasn't a drill. This wasn't a warning. This was an attack. Her mind snapped into a strange, cold clarity. Minjae? That was her first thought. Not herself, not escape, not fear. Him. She wrenched her arm free. "Where is he?" The guard stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "Stay here." "No," she said, sharper than she felt. "Where is he?" Another gunshot echoed, followed by the unmistakable sound of return fire. Controlled, precise. The guard cursed under his breath. "Office wing, west side." Naomi didn't wait. She ran. The estate had never felt this large before. Corridors stretched endlessly, shadows flickering as lights cut in and out. She could smell gunpowder now, sharp and metallic. Her shoes slipped on polished stone as she turned a corner too fast, nearly colliding with two guards moving in the opposite direction. "Miss, I know where I'm going," she said, breathless, and kept moving. She didn't, not really, but she knew who she was going to. The west wing doors were half closed, one hanging crooked on its hinges. Splintered wood littered the floor. Naomi slowed, pressing herself against the wall, peering inside. Chaos. Two intruders were already down, blood staining the white marble. Another body lay motionless near the staircase, one of Minjae's men, and in the center of it all, Minjae. He stood with his back to her, gun raised, movements sharp and efficient. His shirt was torn at the shoulder, dark with blood, but he didn't slow. He fired once more, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. The last intruder fell. Silence crashed down, thick and ringing. Naomi stepped forward without thinking. "Minjae?" He turned instantly, gun lifting, then stopping mid-motion when he saw her. "What the hell are you doing here?" he barked. "You're bleeding." His jaw clenched. "You shouldn't be here." She crossed the space between them, ignoring the bodies, the blood, the smell of violence that clung to everything. Her hands hovered near his shoulder. "Sit," she said. "This isn't." "Sit," she repeated, voice unsteady but firm. For a heartbeat they stared at each other. Then, surprisingly, he obeyed, lowering himself onto the edge of a desk, gun finally dropping to his side. Only then did Naomi's hands start shaking. "You're hit," she said, examining the wound. "Bullet graze?" "Yes. You say that like it's nothing." In my world it is. She shot him a look. Not in mine. She tore fabric from a fallen curtain, pressing it against his shoulder. He hissed quietly, muscles tensing. Sorry, she murmured. No, you're not. She almost laughed. Almost. Why did you come here? He asked, quieter now. Because you were here. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. She shot back. His eyes softened despite himself. Guards flooded the room moments later, sweeping, checking pulses, securing exits. Orders were barked. Radios crackled. Min-jae waved them away from Naomi. She stays. They listened. That scared her more than the gunshots. An hour later, the estate was locked down tighter than she'd ever seen it. Bodies were gone, blood scrubbed, windows boarded, silence restored, but it was the brittle kind, stretched thin over pan. Naomi sat on the edge of Min-jae's bed, wrapping a clean bandage around his shoulder, while a doctor hovered nearby. You're lucky, the doctor said. Another inch and I know, Min-jae replied flatly. The doctor glanced at Naomi, then back at him. He needs rest. He won't, she said. Min-jae smirked. She knows me too well. The doctor left. Naomi didn't. You could have died, she said, finally letting the words out. So could you, he replied. That's different. Why? Because you chose this life. He studied her carefully. And you didn't choose to walk straight into a firefight either. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I should be angry, she said instead. You are. I should be terrified. You're not? I am, she admitted. But I'm more angry than scared. He nodded slowly. That's how it starts. She frowned. What starts? Understanding. She stood abruptly, pacing the room. This isn't understanding. This is insanity. People tried to kill you. They came into your home. They failed. That's not the point. She stopped in front of him, eyes blazing. This isn't sustainable. You can't keep pulling me deeper into this. I'm not pulling you, he said quietly. You're walking. The truth of that hit hard. I didn't ask for this, she whispered. No, he agreed. But you didn't run either. She looked away. I could send you away, he said. Now, tonight, somewhere safe. Her chest tightened. And would they stop? No. Then what's the difference? He had no answer. Days passed after the attack, but nothing returned to normal. Min-jae's enemies had crossed a line. The retaliation was swift and brutal, though Naomi only learned of it through hushed conversations, and headlines that spoke of unrelated incidents, and corporate disputes. She watched Min-jae from a distance now, noticing things she hadn't before, the weight he carried, the decisions etched into his posture, the way his eyes tracked every room, every face. You don't switch off, she said, one evening as they sat in the garden, the city lights flickering beyond the walls. No, ever? He shook his head. If I do, I die. She hugged her knees to her chest. That sounds lonely. It is. She glanced at him. Then why keep me here? He turned to her slowly. Because you see me. Her breath caught. Most people see power, he continued, or fear, or money. You see the man standing in the middle of a battlefield, trying not to lose what little he has left. She swallowed. What do you have left? He met her gaze. You. The word hung between them. Fragile and dangerous. That's not fair, she whispered. No, he agreed. But it's true. She stood, shaking. I need air. You're outside. Not enough. She walked away before he could stop her. That night, Naomi couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the gunshots, the blood, the way Min-jae had looked when he thought she might be hurt. Something had shifted. She wasn't just a guest anymore. She was leverage. And worse, she was a weakness. In the early hours of the morning, she made a decision. If she was going to stay, she needed to stop being helpless. The next day, she found June. I want training, she said. He blinked. Training for what? Self-defense, situational awareness, anything. June hesitated. Min-jae won't like this. I don't care. That was a lie. She cared very much, but she cared more about surviving. When Min-jae found out, he was furious. You're not turning into one of my soldiers. He snapped. I already live in your war zone, she shot back. The difference is, I don't know how to fight. You don't need to. I do if I want to stay alive without hiding behind you. That stopped him. You want to stay, he said quietly. She nodded. He searched her face, then exhaled sharply. Fine, but you do it my way, meaning, you don't take risks. You don't get reckless. She almost laughed. Says the man who got shot in his own house. His mouth twitched. Touche. Training changed her. Not overnight, not dramatically, but piece by piece. Naomi found confidence where fear had lived. She learned how to fall without panic, how to watch hands, how to read a room. Minjae watched all of it, sometimes with approval, sometimes with something like pride, sometimes with fear. You're becoming dangerous, he told her once. She smirked. Good. No, he said softly, because now, they'll really notice you. She met his gaze. Then let them. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You don't understand what that means. Then teach me, she said. And in that moment, Minjae realized something that unsettled him more than any enemy ever had. Naomi wasn't just someone he was protecting anymore. She was someone choosing to stand beside him. And that meant the next battle wouldn't just be about power. It would be about who they were willing to lose, and who they refused to let go. The first real test came 3 nights later. Naomi didn't know it was a test at the time. She thought it was just another evening, locked inside the estate, another dinner eaten in silence, while armed men rotated shifts outside the walls. She thought it was routine. Minjae knew better. He had been tense all day. That quiet, coiled tension, that meant violence, was circling just beyond sight. Naomi recognized it now. The way his gaze lingered on exits. The way his phone never left his hand. The way his guards spoke in half-sentence. You're not leaving your wing tonight, he told her shortly after dinner. I wasn't planning to, she replied. Good. The word landed heavier than it should have. Naomi retreated to her room, changed into comfortable clothes, and sat on the edge of the bed, with a book she wasn't really reading. Her mind kept drifting back to training earlier that day. June had pushed her harder than usual. Bruises bloomed along her forearms, faint but tender. She didn't mind them. They reminded her she was learning. She was halfway through the same paragraph, for the 5th time when the lights flickered. Once, twice, then steadied. Naomi froze. The estate's power system was layered, redundant. Flickers didn't just happen. Her door handle clicked softly, not opening, testing. Her pulse quickened, but she didn't panic. June's voice echoed in her head. Don't rush, listen first. She slid quietly off the bed, moving toward the corner where the shadow was deepest. Her phone vibrated in her hand. A message. Minjae, stay where you are. Lock your door. Do not move unless I tell you to. Her fingers tightened around the phone. Another vibration. Minjae, this is not a drill. A low thud reverberated through the walls. Then another. Distant, but unmistakable. Footsteps. Too many. Too fast. Naomi locked the door, and pressed her back against it. Heart hammering but mind strangely clear. She scanned the room automatically, noting the window, the bathroom, the heavy dresser she could tip if needed. Another sound. Metal scraping stone. Someone was inside the estate. She typed quickly. Naomi, where are you? The response took longer than she liked. Minjae, West stairwell. Moving. Her breath caught. That was too close. The sounds drew nearer. Voices now, low and urgent, speaking a language she didn't understand. A crash echoed from the hall. A gunshot followed. Naomi flinched, clamping a hand over her mouth to keep from making a sound. This was it. This was what he had warned her about. Her phone vibrated again. Minjae, if they breach your corridor, you run. Bathroom, second vent, crawl space, leads to East Passage. You know the route. She did. She hated that she did. Naomi crouched low, as the first explosion shook the corridor outside. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Shouts followed. Guards responding. Boots pounding. Her door rattled violently. Someone tried the handle. Another voice barked something sharp and angry. Naomi moved. She slipped into the bathroom, lifted the vent cover with practiced hands, and climbed into the narrow crawl space, just as the door splintered open behind her. The sound was deafening. Wood cracking, shouting,
Gunfire. She crawled fast, heart in her throat, hands scraping metal. As the tunnel bent sharply, the air was thick with dust and heat. Halfway through she heard footsteps beneath her. Too close. She froze, pressing herself flat as voices passed below. Her muscles screamed as she held still, counting breaths, waiting for the sound to fade. When it did, she moved again. She emerged into the east passage, breathless, hair plastered to her face, hands shaking. June appeared from the shadows instantly, grabbing her arm. You okay? She nodded, swallowing hard. Minjae, his jaw tightened. Still fighting. Naomi pulled free. Take me to him. No, I'm not asking. June hesitated only a second before nodding. Stay behind me. They moved through smoke-filled corridors, stepping over shattered glass and fallen furniture. Bodies lay where they'd fallen. Some guards, some intruders. Naomi forced herself not to look too closely. The west stairwell was chaos. Minjae stood near the base, gun raised, blood streaking down his forearm from a fresh cut. Two of his men were down. Another leaned against the wall, clutching his side. An intruder burst from the landing above. Naomi saw it before anyone else. Left, she shouted. Minjae pivoted instantly, firing once. The intruder collapsed mid-step. Silence slammed down again, broken only by ragged breathing. Minjae turned and saw her. His face changed in an instant. What did I tell you? He snapped, striding toward her. To run, she said, voice shaking. I did. Then I came back. His hand clenched into a fist. You shouldn't be here. I know. Then why? Because you were still here, she said. And I wasn't going to hide while you bled. For a moment the world seemed to narrow to just the two of them. Then Minjae exhaled sharply and pulled her into his chest. The gesture was abrupt, fierce, protective. Naomi froze, then melted into it, her hands gripping his jacket. He smelled like gunpowder and iron, and something unmistakably human. Don't do that again, he murmured into her hair. She laughed weakly. You first. The rest of the night blurred together. Authorities were paid off, bodies removed, damage contained. By dawn, the estate looked eerily calm again. Naomi sat in the infirmary, as Minjae's wounds were cleaned. This time, the blood wasn't just his enemies. You got hurt because of me, she said quietly. He glanced at her. No, I got hurt because someone thought they could take what's mine. Her breath hitched. That's not I know, he said gently. I'm not saying you're an object. I'm saying they made you a target. That's worse. Yes. The admission sat heavy between them. You should leave, he said, after a long pause. Naomi stiffened. You don't mean that. I do. He met her eyes steadily. This will keep happening. They're testing me, testing you, seeing how far I'll go, and how far will you go, as far as it takes. That's what scares me, she said. It should. She stood abruptly. I'm not running. You should. I won't. Minjae's expression darkened. This isn't bravery. It's stubbornness. No, she said. It's choice. Silence stretched. You don't belong in this world, he said finally. Neither did you once, she replied. That stopped him cold. You told me, she continued, voice softer now, that you weren't born into this, that you built it because you had to survive. Yes, so did I, she said, just differently. He studied her, really studied her, as if seeing something new. You're changing, he said quietly. So are you. The shift was undeniable. Naomi no longer flinched at raised voices. She no longer looked away from blood. She moved with purpose, asked sharper questions, noticed patterns, and Minjae began to rely on her, not in combat, in judgment. What do you think? He asked one evening, sliding a file across the table. She skimmed it, brow furrowing. This feels like bait. Why? Too clean, too generous. They want you to move. He nodded slowly. That's what I thought. Another night, another discussion, another shared silence that felt heavier than words. The line between protection and partnership blurred, but enemies noticed. A message arrived 3 days later, delivered through channels Minjae hadn't used in years. One line, she's learning too fast. Naomi watched Minjae read it. His face hardened into something dangerous. They're watching you, he said. I know. They won't stop. I know. He stood, pacing, I should have ended this sooner. You still can, she said. Send me away. He stopped in front of her. Would you go? She met his gaze. No. A bitter smile touched his lips. Then we're past the point of clean exits. What does that mean? It means the next move won't be defensive. Her stomach tightened. What are you planning? He leaned down, resting his hands on the table, eyes dark and focused. To make them afraid. Naomi hesitated, then nodded. Then teach me, she said. He straightened slowly. Teach you what? How to survive what comes next, she said, without losing myself. Min-jae looked at her for a long time, then quietly, that's the hardest part. Outside, the city pulsed on, unaware that its balance was shifting. Inside the estate, something far more dangerous than violence was taking shape. Not fear, not power, but loyalty. And once chosen, it would cost them both more than they were ready to admit. The lesson began at dawn, not with weapons, with silence. Min-jae took Naomi to the Eastern Training Hall, before the rest of the estate was. The space was wide and bare, concrete floors marked with faint scars from years of use. Sunlight filtered through high windows, pale and cold. You already know how to react, he said, standing several feet away from her. Today is about control. Control of what? Naomi asked. Fear, anger, impulse. She folded her arms. Those sound like survival instincts. They are, he replied, and they get people killed. He gestured for her to stand in the center of the room. Close your eyes. She hesitated, then obeyed. Breathe, he said calmly. Not deep, even. She focused on the sound of her breath, the faint echo in the hall. Now listen. At first, there was nothing. Then she heard it. Movement. Footsteps, soft but deliberate, circling her. Don't turn, he warned. Don't guess. Just listen. Her muscles tensed automatically. I know you want to act, Min-jae continued. That urge will save you sometimes. Other times, it will betray you. A sudden noise snapped from behind her, sharp, loud. Naomi flinched. Again, he said simply. They repeated it, over and over. Sounds, sudden movements, silence, stretching until her nerves screamed. By the 10th time, her reaction slowed. By the 20th, they softened. By the 30th, she didn't flinch at all. Good, Min-jae said. Open your eyes. She did, blinking. You didn't move, he observed. I wanted to, she admitted. That's the point. He stepped closer. People like us survive because we act when others freeze. But leaders survive because they choose when not to. Naomi absorbed that quietly. The days that followed were intense. Training in observation, reading rooms, reading people. Min-jae would bring her into meetings, not as a participant, but as a presence. Watch, he'd murmur. Who speaks first? Who interrupts? Who avoids eye contact? Afterward, he'd test her. What did you notice? That man on the left, she said once. He kept adjusting his cuff, nervous. He wasn't prepared. Min-jae nodded. He's lying. Another time, the woman didn't say anything. Naomi said, but she watched you the entire time. She's the dangerous one, Min-jae replied. Good. Her confidence grew. Not loud, not reckless, but steady. Too steady. By the end of the week, whispers had begun. She's not just a guest. She's not leaving. She's changing him. Naomi heard them when they thought she couldn't. She didn't confront them. She didn't need to. The next strike came without warning. Not an attack. An offer. It arrived in the form of a man in a gray suit, escorted under heavy guard. He was calm, too calm. I represent interests that want this conflict to end, he said, seated across from Min-jae in the conference room. Naomi stood behind Min-jae's chair.
You mean you want leverage? Min-jae replied. The man smiled thinly. Same thing, really. He slid a folder across the table. Safe passage, new territory, clean money, recognition. Min-jae didn't touch it. In exchange, he asked. The man's eyes flicked briefly to Naomi. Silence thickened. Naomi felt it instantly. Say it, Min-jae said coldly. The man cleared his throat. She leaves. Permanently. The air changed. Naomi felt Min-jae go still beneath her gaze. She's not a bargaining chip, Min-jae said. No, the man agreed smoothly. She's a weakness? The word landed hard. Naomi stepped forward before Minjai could speak. I'll go, she said. Minjai turned sharply. No. The man looked almost pleased. Wise choice. Naomi met Minjai's eyes. Listen to me. No, he said again, lower now. This ends here. You said I had to learn control, she said quietly. This is me choosing. He stood, towering over the table. This is them testing us. And they will keep testing, she replied, as long as I'm here. The room held its breath. Minjai dismissed the man with a single gesture. Guards escorted him out immediately. The door closed. You don't get to decide that, Minjai snapped, turning on her. I do, Naomi said firmly. It's my life. You don't understand what leaving means, he said. They won't protect you. They'll watch you, use you. They already are, she shot back. And every time they do, someone dies. He looked away, jaw clenched. I won't be the reason you burn everything down, she said softer. You're not, he replied. You're the reason I haven't. That stopped her. The truth sat heavy between them. That night, the estate felt smaller. Naomi packed quietly, hands trembling despite her resolve. Minjai stood in the doorway, silent. You're making a mistake, he said finally. Maybe, she replied. But it's mine. He took a step toward her, then stopped himself. If you leave, he said, voice low, I can't protect you. I'm not asking you to. He studied her face like he was memorizing it. Where will you go? Somewhere quiet, she said. Somewhere they don't expect. He nodded slowly. They'll expect everywhere. She paused, then said, then teach me one last thing. He raised an eyebrow. How to disappear. The request hung in the air. Minjai exhaled slowly. That lesson has a price. I know. They spent the night planning. Routes, contacts, covers. Minjai stripped away her digital footprint piece by piece. New identity, new patterns, no social trails, he said. No habits, no goodbyes, she swallowed. What about you? I stay, he said simply. At dawn, the car waited. Naomi stood at the gate, coat pulled tight, heart pounding. Minjai handed her a phone. One number, he said. Burn it after. She took it. Don't be brave, he added quietly. Be smart. She met his gaze. You taught me both. For a moment, it looked like he might say something else. Instead, he stepped back. The gate opened. The car pulled away. Minjai watched until it disappeared. Then he turned back toward the estate, expression hardening. They had made their move. Now it was his turn. 3 days later, the first domino fell. A warehouse seized. A shipment intercepted. An ally flipped. Word spread quickly. Minjai Santoro was no longer defending. He was hunting, and Naomi, miles away under a different name, felt it too. The quiet was deceptive. Her new apartment was small, anonymous, perfect. She learned the rhythms of the street, the sounds of the building. She didn't use the phone, didn't look back, until one night, as she locked her door, she felt it. That familiar tension. She wasn't alone. The lesson echoed in her mind. Don't rush. Listen first. Footsteps outside. A pause, then a knock. Soft, deliberate. Naomi didn't move. The knock came again, and a voice low, unfamiliar. Wrong car, it said through the door. Christmas Eve. Her blood ran cold. They had found her, and far away, Minjai felt the shift. The game had entered its next phase. The knock came a third time. Naomi stayed perfectly still, her back pressed to the door. Every breath controlled the way Minjai had taught her. Fear tried to rise. She pushed it down. Wrong car. The voice repeated. Calm, almost polite. Christmas Eve. She didn't answer. Silence stretched. Then footsteps moved away. Slow, measured. She waited a full minute before looking through the peephole. The hallway was empty. That was when her phone vibrated in her pocket. The phone she was never supposed to use. One message. No name. Behind you is a window. Do not turn around. Leave now. Her heart slammed, but her body moved. Naomi slipped on her shoes, grabbed the small bag she'd kept ready, and unlocked the door without a sound. She moved down the stairwell instead of the elevator, counting steps, listening. At the bottom, the exit door creaked just slightly. Outside, cold air hit her face. A black sedan idled across the street. The rear door opened. Minjai sat inside, alive, uninjured, watching her like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. She froze. You said no goodbyes, she whispered as she approached the car. I didn't say no rescues, he replied. She got in. The door shut. The car moved instantly. Only when the building disappeared behind them did she exhale. They found me, she said. I knew they would, Minjai answered. That was the point. She turned to him sharply. You used me as bait. I used myself, he corrected. They followed you because they wanted leverage. I followed them back. Her anger flared, then faltered when she saw the exhaustion in his eyes. It's over, he said quietly. Their network is gone, their money frozen, their leaders in custody. She searched his face. You're sure? He nodded once. I wouldn't come for you if I wasn't. The city lights slid past the windows. Naomi leaned back, tension finally draining from her body. I didn't run, she said after a moment. I know, Minjai replied. You waited. You listened. A pause. You disappeared perfectly, he added. That was the hardest part to undo. She almost smiled. The car slowed, then stopped at a quiet overlook above the city. Minjai turned off the engine. For the first time, he said. No one is chasing us. Naomi looked out at the skyline, then back at him. So what happens now? Minjai met her gaze. No commands, no locks, no threats, a choice. Now, he said, you decide where you go, and I ask without forcing, without cages, if I can go with you. The silence felt different this time. Safe. Naomi opened the door, stepped out into the cold night, then turned back. Only if the doors stay unlocked, she said. Minjai stepped out beside her. Below them, the city breathed on, unaware of the war that had just ended, unaware of the wrong car that had changed two lives forever. Naomi slipped her hands into her coat pockets and faced the future. This time, she wasn't trapped. This time she chose.